My downfall began with a gnawing despair. At 26, I inhabited a decaying one-bedroom flat perched above a pawn shop in Kent, Ohio. The radiators spewed steam, a furious serpent's hiss, and the windows bled icy drafts with every gust of wind. My full-time dispatcher role at a transport firm vanished when they shipped it off to Arizona. Not a personal slight, just cold, hard figures, always the figures. For 4 grueling months, I barely survived on a patchwork of gigs, temporary assignments, pet-sitting, hawking forgotten items on social media. I flung out applications to over 100 openings, supermarkets, office roles, graveyard shifts, yet nothing took hold. Most didn't even bother with a no, just an echoing void. And when poverty bites, that void screams that your existence holds no value. One bleak November evening, hunched over my splintered kitchen table, the laptop's blue light the only beacon in the gloom, I desperately searched for quick cash. I stumbled upon an online hub where folks traded tales of side hustles. A user, broke in Boston, hailed secret shopping as a godsend, simple earnings, almost enjoyable. I clicked his link, which led to a stark online advertisement. Mystery shoppers wanted, Ohio, flexible, email and transport required, $35, $50/shop, no fees. Start now. It reeked of a con, but I had nowhere else to turn. An hour later, a message arrived from a Denise Weston, a simple email address, yet her words dripped with corporate polish. She seemed genuine, attaching a plain PDF of directives and a form requesting my details, payment method, and availability. I filled it out, fingers trembling, and sent it back. The following dawn, my first mission landed in my inbox. Assess a worker at Mayfair Market, a familiar grocery chain, a mere 15 minutes away in a sleepy neighborhood. The guidelines were stark: enter between 6 and 8, pinpoint the employee in aisle 4 canned goods, inquire about tuna, and complete a customer service evaluation. Absolute anonymity, she warned. Do not, under any circumstances, reveal your true purpose. Report within 2 hours for payment. It felt manageable. I'd once been the hunted, not the hunter, back in my high school retail days. We'd swap hushed tales of these phantom shoppers, a secret competition for the perfect greeting and unwavering eye contact. At 6:17 p.m., clad in a threadbare black hoodie, I slipped into Mayfair Market, my breath shallow, heart hammering like I was embarking on a covert operation. The air hung heavy with the scent of disinfectant and rotting fruit. I feigned interest in random products, trying to blend in. Aisle 4 was deserted. The only figure was a young man, perhaps 24, gaunt, with pale brown hair and sunken eyes. His faded red vest bore the name Miles. He restocked cans with a vacant stare, a look I knew well from my own graveyard shifts. I paused at an end cap, pretending to scan a coupon, then approached him. "Excuse me," I mumbled. "Could you point me to the canned tuna?" He didn't even lift his head. Middle of the aisle, left side, he droned, still stacking. No glance, no greeting, no offer to guide me, just a dismissive flick of his hand. "Okay, thanks," I said, lingering, hoping he might salvage his score with a parting remark. He remained silent. "Have a good night," I offered finally, just to end the awkwardness. He looked up then, his eyes glazed, a faint redness in their depths. "You too," he muttered, then simply stared. I tapped Miles into my phone notes and spun away. But as I turned into the next aisle, a chill crept up my spine, that primal dread of being watched, like a shadow dogging your steps in the dark. I risked a glance back. He stood at the aisle's edge, his gaze fixed on me. My pace quickened. Every new section I entered, there he was again. Near the vibrant produce, then lurking by the cold dairy cases. Not working, just standing, observing. By the time I reached the registers, sweat beaded on my skin beneath my hoodie. The cashier, a cheerful student named Amber, breezed through her evaluation. A bright smile, direct eye contact, a chirpy "enjoy your night." I managed a strained smile, a stiff nod, and hurried out. I scrambled into my car, the engine roaring to life, and under the pale glow of the interior lamp, I hastily typed out my report, desperate to capture every detail before it faded. I noted Miles had botched the encounter, failing to greet me, offering no assistance, and barely meeting my gaze. Mid-sentence, a dark shape flickered across my windshield. It was him, Miles. Striding furiously across the asphalt, his heavy steps vibrating through the ground. He didn't glance directly at my vehicle, but he brushed unnervingly close, heading for a battered black sedan parked just a few spots away. He climbed in, then shot out of the lot, his tires shrieking in protest. I watched his vanishing taillights, a knot tightening in my throat. Finally, I drove home. The next morning, a crisp $40 landed in my PayPal, alongside a fresh assignment. I tried to push him from my mind. 3 nights later, I was curled up at my partner Jesse's duplex across town, the scent of Chinese food filling the air as we watched old episodes of Asterisk. Whose line is it anyway? Asterisk. His dog, Mako, lay softly dreaming at our feet. Close to midnight, a sharp rap echoed from the door. No, not a rap, more like a series of violent thuds. Jesse froze the TV. We exchanged a terrified glance. Mako jolted awake, issuing a low, guttural warning. "Who the hell?" Jesse murmured, rising to peer through the window. I trailed him, and as we parted the blinds, my stomach plunged. It was Miles. The same hoodie, the same hollow eyes, but now even more tormented, as if sleep had abandoned him for days. He was stalking our porch, muttering to himself, then abruptly slamming his fists against the door once more. I recoiled. Jesse cracked open the storm door window. "Hey man, you need to get out of here, now." Miles remained rooted. He just smashed the door again, his voice raw as he screamed, "I know what you did. You ruined everything." "What the hell is he talking about?" Jesse whispered, turning to me. My mouth was parched. My heart thundered so violently I felt its pulse echo through my limbs. "I told you I was already on my last chance," Miles roared. "And you come in there asking for damn tuna like you're better than me?" Jesse shielded me, grabbing his phone. I nodded desperately. "Call the cops." Miles kept screaming, his voice splintering. "You cost me my job, you got me fired, you think you can just waltz into my store and shatter my life? You think you're safe? There's always an eye for an eye." He started throwing his body against the door. The wood splintered with sickening force. Mako howled furiously, tail tucked, ears pressed flat. I clutched Jesse's arm. He must have followed me that night. There was no other way he could have found me here. "SHHH," Jesse whispered, phone pressed to his ear. The operator remained connected. Less than 2 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through the room. When the cruisers screeched to a halt, Miles bolted, but an officer brought him down hard in the yard. Jesse and I stood frozen, watching from the window as they slapped on the handcuffs. Mako's furious barks softened to whimpers. As they frisked him, an officer pulled a glinting switchblade from his waistband. That's when an uncontrollable tremor seized me. In the days that followed, the detective handling the investigation offered a starker picture. Miles, whose real name was Brandon Miles Henley, had been employed at Mayfair for nearly 2 years. He had a history of warnings and was already under strict review for flunking an earlier mystery shop. The very night I appeared, his girlfriend had ended things. His car had just failed inspection. He was already drowning in overdue rent. He wasn't simply having a rough day, he was teetering on the edge. My report had indeed cost him his job. That much was undeniable. But the part that haunts me still, I never used my real name on the shopper form. The email was an anonymous account, unconnected to my true identity. So how did he find me? How did he know I was the secret shopper? How did he know Jesse's address? One theory suggested store cameras. Perhaps he replayed the footage, saw me in my car. Maybe he followed me and I was too oblivious to notice. Or perhaps he jotted down my license plate, then found someone who could trace it. I still don't know. What I know is I never secret shopped again. I rejected every subsequent task. Eventually, I found stable employment at a call center, gradually trying to erase the entire terrifying ordeal. The lingering shadow of that night still clings to me. When I'm in a grocery aisle, my eyes snag on an employee restocking shelves and a cold dread whispers, do they know? Are they watching? The line blurs between upholding corporate rules often meaningless and shattering a person's last shred of hope. I crossed that line and a life almost ended because of it. I swore I'd never touch a Craigslist job, not out of pride but fear. The tales were endless, shady encounters, no-shows, outright cons, or worse. But life has a way of tightening its grip, squeezing you until every safe path vanishes, leaving only the risky ones. My own dark spiral had begun 3 weeks after my full-time dental clinic job evaporated, another victim of downsizing. Alone in my tiny East Marlboro studio, I was burning through meager savings, patching together a living with odd, fleeting tasks. The rent clock was ticking louder with each passing day. When desperation finally clawed at me, I reached out to Emily, a friend who always juggled a dozen side hustles. She'd once found babysitting gigs on Craigslist. Screen them ruthlessly, she'd warned. Never walk in blind, ask everything, listen to your gut. I'd spent years babysitting through high school and college. I was good at it. Surely, it couldn't be much different now. Just a few hours keeping kids safe and sound. The initial postings I scrolled through were either shadowy or oddly vague. Then one appeared, almost *2 ordinary, like a calm surface hiding something deeper. A Craigslist ad, child care needed, Saturday evening. It read, hello, seeking a sitter for our 2 sons, ages 6 and 9, this Saturday, 5:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Our home is relaxed. We simply need a responsible person while we celebrate our anniversary. $120 for the night. Message for address, regards, Chloe M. A strange sense of security settled over me. The tone was so effortless, the pay generous but not alarming. I sent my reply. An hour later, Chloe's message landed in my inbox, the address and a quick note. Thank you for getting back to me. My husband and I will head out right after 5:30. The boys are Isaac and Dylan. They are incredibly easy, dinner's already handled. Just TV, games, maybe a story before bed. Expect a peaceful night. We exchanged a few more messages. She seemed utterly normal, even warm, ending with a smiley face. It made my earlier caution feel almost foolish. Yet a sliver of unease remained, so I ran my checks. I Googled the address, 1585 Brookfield Lane. It sat in a quiet cul-de-sac just beyond the town's edge, nestled among older homes, nothing to truly alarm me. Still, I forwarded the details to Emily. Text me the moment you arrive, she instructed, and if even a hint of anything feels wrong, get out. That Saturday was bone dry, the air still. At 5:18 p.m., I nudged my car up the cracked driveway. The house itself was unremarkable, a single story with peeling blue paint and wild, overgrown bushes. A lonely wind chime whispered under the porch awning. The porch light glowed even though the sun hadn't fully set. A strange, sharp pinch seized my chest, not outright fear, but a sudden, gripping tightness. I knocked again and this time heard a shuffle inside. The door creaked open, revealing a man. He looked late 50s, maybe 60, tall, gaunt, with sparse gray hair and a scraggly beard. His t-shirt was faded, his jeans splattered with paint. He squinted at me as if battling the light. "You the babysitter?" he grunted. "Yes," I confirmed. "Chloe messaged me, said to be here at 5:30. Right, he mumbled, scratching his head. "She just ducked out with the boys for snacks. But you can come in, she'll be back in 5. His gaze, a strange, lingering stare, sent a shiver down my spine, but I fought against panic. I stepped inside. The door swung shut with a soft asterisk click, asterisk, the sound of the lock engaging. A stale, heavy scent of dust and old grease hung in the air. The front room was a chaotic mess of cardboard boxes, towering stacks of newspapers, and a lone, tired recliner. "Sorry for the clutter," he offered, a weak chuckle. "Just reorganizing." "No worries," I lied, my voice feeling thin. He waved a hand down a cramped hallway. "Living room's through there, TV, couch, you can wait." As I walked, my eyes darted, searching. No bright toys, no crayon drawings taped to walls, no small backpacks, no family photos with children's faces. Just muted beige, generic framed prints and a film of dust on everything. I sank onto a faded brown couch. My phone vibrated. "Emily, asterisk you good, asterisk it read." I typed back, forcing a calm I didn't feel, asterisk weird vibe, but okay so far. "Chloe not here yet, just the husband, asterisk." He drifted past the hall once more, a low murmur escaping his lips as he paced relentlessly. Every few moments, his head would pop into the living room, a strange apology on his tongue. "She really should be back by now," or "my apologies." Terrible timing. This whole situation felt increasingly like a staged act. At 5:45, a cold certainty settled over me. "I think I'll just leave," I announced, feigning indifference. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their depths. "No, wait, she's probably just in the basement. I didn't hear the front door, so she must have used the side entrance." He gestured towards a door I hadn't noticed, half hidden by a kitchen curtain. "She takes the boys down there for crafts. She's likely waiting for you." The house had fallen into a deep, oppressive silence. I approached the door and slowly pushed it open. A gaping blackness greeted me, a chilling, earthy stench rising to meet my nose, mold, dust, and a sharp, metallic tang like old blood and rust. I froze. "Go on," he urged, his voice unnaturally bright. "They're probably just getting settled." My feet were rooted. My stomach lurched, a sickening twist. "Actually," I stammered, "I just got a text. I think my ride's here ahead of schedule." "I really must go, so sorry. Perhaps we can reschedule." I spun around, a jolt of pure terror propelling me towards the front door. He was still there, a shadow at my heels. "Hold on," he commanded, his voice now devoid of its earlier cheer, sharp and dry. "You haven't even met the boys." My fingers fumbled wildly at the deadbolt, my heart a drumbeat against my ribs. I dared not look back. I burst through the door, flying down the porch steps, across the overgrown lawn, to my car. My hands trembled violently as I wrestled with the lock. Behind me, his shouts echoed a name, a garbled phrase. It didn't matter. I slammed the car door shut, the engine roaring to life, and tore out of the driveway. In my rearview mirror, he stood in the front yard, a menacing silhouette, his hands clenched into fists. I drove wildly for 10 minutes until the familiar lights of a grocery store parking lot offered a semblance of safety. I pulled in, parked, and wept. Then I called Emily. She answered instantly, her voice urgent. "What happened?" I poured out the entire terrifying ordeal. "Call the police," Emily urged, her voice firm. Right now, the dispatcher's calm tone was a stark contrast to my shaking voice as I recounted the house, the man, the sinister babysitting trap. She noted the address, expressing gratitude for the report. 2 hours later, an officer called for a follow-up. I repeated every detail. He assured me they would investigate. Officially, that was the end. 2 weeks crawled by. I tried desperately to push the memory away, burying myself in a temporary job at a pet supply store, clinging to the mundane rhythm of everyday life. Then, one evening, my phone vibrated, an unknown number. A text message: "We saw your babysitting profile online. We have 2 boys, ages 6 and 9, and need a sitter this Saturday evening. $120 for the night. Let us know if you're available." The exact same phrasing, the identical pay, but from a different number. I hadn't even created a public profile. There was no way to trace it. My blood ran cold. I blocked the number. 2 days later, another message arrived. Another different number. "Hey, found your ad, looking for a sitter near Brookfield area. Easy night. Let us know if you're free." Tom and Chloe. The very next day, I changed my phone number. 3 months later, I uprooted my entire life, moving cities, accepting Emily's offer to stay with her in Ridgewood until I could find my footing again. I never heard from Chloe or Tom after that. Still, I kept screenshots of every chilling message, just in case. Even now, when I scroll through online job boards, my eyes snag on listings that mirror those dreadful ads, the same unsettling tone, the identical rate, only different names and zip codes. And a cold, creeping question always lingers. How many people ignored that gut feeling? How many descended those dark basement steps, and how many never emerged? My next descent into the precarious world of online transactions began with a surprisingly mundane task. I had decided to part ways with my 2006 Honda CR-V. It wasn't a fancy vehicle, but it was dependable, with a clean title and no significant mechanical woes. Even with 200,000 miles, it still had plenty of life. Sure, the hood's paint was a bit faded and the AC sometimes rattled oddly, but these were minor quirks. I'd maintained it meticulously for years: oil changes, tire rotations, new brake pads, all on schedule. Having recently upgraded to a newer car, I didn't want the old one gathering dust, so I decided to list it on Craigslist. It was where I'd initially bought it years ago, and my past experiences on the site had been largely positive. People always warned of its sketchiness, but I believed that with caution it was perfectly safe, or so I naively thought. I snapped about 10 photos: interior, exterior, the odometer, even under the hood, then crafted a straightforward, honest advertisement. My asking price, $2,800, was perfectly reasonable, neither suspiciously low nor outrageously high. I posted the ad Thursday afternoon, and silence stretched through the day. But Friday morning around 10:30, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. The text read, "Saw your CR-V ad. Tony here. Been searching for one. Still got it." I tapped back, "Yep, it's here. Want to see it?" His immediate reply, "Tomorrow night after work around 8:30 or 9. Works for you?" I hesitated. Late visits weren't unheard of, especially for those with unusual work hours. Yet a stranger arriving so late stirred a subtle unease within me. Still, my apartment complex was sizable, nestled in West Grove, a calm suburb. My car waited in the wide-open lot. He wouldn't need to approach my door. I responded, "Perfect. Meet me in the parking lot by the car." A swift cool "See you then," X flashed back. At that moment, nothing truly screamed danger. The following day, I meticulously prepped the car, vacuuming, wiping surfaces, emptying the glove box and console of all personal traces. Around 8:15, I pulled on a hoodie and headed downstairs to wait. Darkness had settled, but it wasn't late enough for the night to feel truly menacing. Dog walkers still ambled past, and residents returned from work. I leaned against my CR-V, feigning nonchalance with my phone, though my eyes darted to every vehicle that entered the lot. Precisely at 8:58, a black Dodge Charger, its windows darkly tinted, glided into the lot. It rolled slowly past my position before settling into a visitor spot 3 spaces over. The driver's door swung open and an imposing man emerged. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, possibly older, bald, with a muscular build and forearms covered in intricate tattoos. He wore a black work jacket and dark jeans, radiating an intense energy as if perpetually on the verge of a confrontation. Yet he smiled as he approached. "Selling the CRV?" he asked, his voice deeper than I'd imagined. "Yes," I managed, forcing a polite smile. "You must be Tony." "Yep," he confirmed, circling the car, scrutinizing its exterior. "Looks clean," I reassured him. "It's been my daily driver, mostly commutes, solid for years. No leaks, no overheating. Timing belt done at 180,000. Have the records if you need them." He nodded, then produced a compact flashlight to examine the tires. "Mind if I check under the hood?" "Of course," I replied, releasing the latch. We went through the routine. He posed a few standard questions, not sounding like a true car enthusiast, but enough to feign interest. "Can I take it for a quick spin?" "I'll need to come with you," I said automatically. "Just company policy." I tried a nervous chuckle, but he offered no humor in return. Tony's grin held no warmth. "No problem," he said. I guided him around the block, then onto the main road where he tested its acceleration. The drive, perhaps 10 minutes, felt stretched and endless in the heavy silence. He spoke little, simply staring straight ahead, his jaw tight. "I like it," he finally declared. "Feels solid." Back in the same parking spot, I stepped out, a flicker of hope rising. "So, what do you think?" He met my gaze for a long moment. "Yeah, I'll think about it," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Then, with chilling casualness, he asked, "Hey, mind if I use your bathroom real quick before I go?" The world seemed to freeze. A sudden, cold dread shot through me, every instinct screaming a primal alarm. My heart clenched. Yeah, I'd rather not," I replied, forcing my voice to remain even. "Nothing personal, but I don't invite strangers into my home." Tony didn't speak. He just held my gaze, his eyes hard, his smile utterly vanished. A suffocating silence descended. Then slowly he nodded. "All right, no worries." I offered a small, stiff wave and turned, not towards my usual side entrance, but circling the entire building towards the main front doors, just in case. Reaching them, I risked a quick glance back. No one. A wave of relief washed over me as I slipped inside. The entryway was hushed. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. As the doors slid open, I stepped in, hit my floor, and leaned back against the cool wall. The ascent took less than 30 agonizing seconds. The moment the elevator doors parted, I pivoted left, heading for my apartment, but froze mid-step. At the hallway's distant end, the stairwell door swung open. Tony emerged. For a fleeting, desperate second, I tried to convince myself it was a stranger, a trick of the light, but my gut screamed the truth. It was him. The same dark jacket, the same deliberate stride, the same chilling, empty gaze. An icy dread seized my veins. I said nothing, simply spun on my heel and walked fast in the opposite direction. I fought the urge to bolt, but then the sound reached me, rapid, heavy footsteps thudding just behind. My restraint shattered. I ran, a full-throttle sprint to the hallway's far end, my mind a blur. I ripped open the stairwell door and plunged down, 2 steps at a time, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. His presence felt unnervingly close, his heavy tread echoing my own as I descended 2 flights, then burst into the cavernous underground garage. Our footsteps rang like a desperate symphony against the concrete. My lungs burned with each ragged breath. I didn't risk my car. Unlocking it felt like an eternity I didn't have. Instead, I veered for the next stairwell, slamming the door shut behind me, and scrambled upwards to the ground floor. The exit door burst open and the sharp, cold night air slapped my face. I tore across the parking lot to my CRV. My hand trembled violently as I wrestled with the lock, flung myself inside, locked the doors with a desperate click, and cranked the key. The engine roared to life. I screeched out of the lot, my phone already pressed to my ear, dialing 911. The dispatcher's calm voice was my anchor as I circled the surrounding streets, recounting the terrifying chase, detailing Tony, his menacing charger, every chilling detail. Barely 5 minutes later, the complex blazed with the flashing red and blue of police lights. I drove back cautiously, parking on the street. Tony's black Charger remained a sinister presence in the lot. Officers found him attempting to pry open the patio door of a ground-floor apartment. No tools, no accomplice, no money, just a desperate, empty-handed attempt. He had zero interest in purchasing a car. That night, the full, sickening truth hit me. I had narrowly escaped something unspeakable. His interest in my CRV was a calculated lie, a lure. He hadn't wanted to buy a vehicle. He'd wanted an address, a face, and a sliver of opportunity. I deleted the Craigslist ad that very night and swore off the site forever. Now, if I ever sell anything online, the meeting point is always the police department parking lot. No exceptions. My next chapter unfolded in the hushed, weary hours of a night shift at a small, unassuming hotel, a forgotten outpost just off the highway. It was far from glamorous, a world of lukewarm coffee, the persistent hum of fluorescent lights, and the occasional slurred argument over a phantom checkout fee. But it paid the bills, allowing me to squirrel away a meager sum. The blessing of those shifts was the profound quiet that descended after midnight. Aside from a rare late check-in, I was largely left to my own devices behind the front desk. I'd fill those slow, dragging hours scrolling through Craigslist, mostly for amusement, sifting through the free section or the electronics listings. People shed the most bizarre possessions: broken exercise machines, entire dining room sets, piles of baby clothes, even fully functional televisions from folks scrambling to move cross-country. At that particular time, my own TV had just gasped its last breath, a hand-me-down Toshiba that had finally given up after years of faithful, if abused, service. Staring at Netflix on my laptop screen was becoming a tiresome ritual. I wasn't seeking anything extravagant, just a working screen. One night, around 2 in the morning, nursing a convenience store sandwich and a coffee that had long since lost its warmth, I stumbled upon a listing. 50-inch LG flat screen, lightly used. The images weren't stock photos. This wasn't the work of some shady reseller. The TV sat on a humble stand in a dimly lit, cluttered living room, flanked by a few moving boxes. It radiated an air of genuine necessity, like someone truly eager to clear out their belongings. The price, $120, felt neither suspiciously low nor unjustly high, just enough to suggest a quick sale. The ad had only been live for 28 minutes. I fired off a concise message. "Hi, I'm interested in the TV. Is it still available?" Then, I returned to my fractured attention between the hotel's security monitors and checking in a trucker whose scent lingered of diesel and deep regret. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a reply. "Hey, this is Kara from Craigslist. Yes, still available. You can come by tomorrow after 6:00 if that works." Her name hadn't been on the original listing, but that wasn't uncommon. I quickly typed back, "7 works for me. What's the address?" She sent it, a location on Willow Terrace Drive, nestled in a quiet neighborhood barely 10 minutes from my apartment. It was one of those older sections of town, characterized by sprawling lawns and weary, single-story homes. I immediately pulled it up on my phone's map, scrutinizing the area. It appeared innocuous enough, a perfectly safe residential street. The next day after my shift, I stopped at an ATM, withdrawing a crisp $140 to cover any unexpected hiccups. It was still bright when I pulled into the quiet neighborhood. Birds sang their evening songs, kids pedaled bikes down sun-drenched streets, and a man across the way diligently mowed his lawn. Kara's address led me to a beige house with a sagging porch and slightly overgrown grass. It wasn't overtly menacing, just a bit forlorn, like a place time had forgotten, perhaps an old aunt's long-held home. I parked along the curb, tucked the cash deep into my jacket pocket, and walked to the door. Before my knuckles could even connect, it creaked open. A woman stood there, average height, dark hair pulled into an untidy knot, clad in a faded college sweatshirt and leggings. She looked to be in her early 30s. "Hey, you must be Alex," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Here for the TV. I'm Kara. Come on in. Sorry about the mess. We're kind of between things right now." The inside mirrored the outside, sparse, dim, with a few boxes stacked near the wall and furniture half moved or packed away. The only light came from a single, small lamp in a distant corner. "No worries," I replied, trying to sound casual. "My place looked like this before I moved in." She offered a hollow, brittle chuckle that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's back in the bedroom," she announced, waving a hand down a cramped hallway. "Right this way." A subtle prickle of unease began to trace its way up my spine. Perhaps it was the suffocating stillness, no background music, no TV drone, no whirring fan, not even the faint hum of a refrigerator. Yet I followed. The narrow corridor stretched ahead, carpet bearing ghostly impressions of countless footsteps. She stopped at the last door on the right. "Right in here," she said, pushing it open. I stepped inside and froze solid. There was no TV. The room was utterly barren. No bed, no boxes, no furniture. Just a blank chamber, its dusty blinds drawn shut, casting the space in perpetual twilight. The door clicked shut behind me. I spun instantly, twisting the knob. It jiggled uselessly, refusing to budge. "Kara," I yelled, my voice sharp with sudden dread. "What the hell is this?" I pounded the door with my fist. My phone showed no signal, not even one bar. A ragged gasp tore from my throat, the primal, instinctual breath your body takes when your mind finally grasps true peril. I pressed my ear to the door, straining. Indistinct whispers, two voices, Kara's and a man's. I hadn't heard him until now. "Let me out," I screamed, battering the wood. "I'm calling the cops." I lurched to the window, fumbled with the latch. It was fused shut, unyielding, barely moving. A cold dread began to claw its way up my throat. I paced, desperate, searching for anything, a weapon, a tool, but the room was utterly bare. I went back to the door, hammering harder, screaming louder, until my throat was raw. Still nothing. Then, a desperate plan sparked in my mind. I yanked out my phone, found the alarm app, maxed out the volume, and hit the most piercing siren it had. I hurled the phone into the far corner of the room, then pressed my back against the wall beside the door. Thudding, rapid footsteps approached. The door creaked open. A hulking figure stepped in, tall and broad-shouldered, clad in a black hoodie and scuffed jeans. His eyes, fixed on the shrieking phone, darted, clearly trying to shut off the infernal noise. That was my window. I lunged, colliding with him, a desperate surge of adrenaline propelling me forward. His shoulder clipped mine, but I was through before he could grab me. The narrow corridor became a tunnel of frantic motion. Kara emerged from the living room, eyes wide with surprise and malice, lunging for me. I twisted, almost stumbling over a forgotten box, but I didn't stop. Out the door, across the sagging porch, keys clutched tight in my hand. I hit the unlock button as I ran, yanked open the car door, threw myself inside, slammed it shut, locked it with a frantic click, and cranked the ignition. They were on the porch by then, two menacing silhouettes. I didn't look back. I tore out of the driveway, tires screaming a protest, and didn't stop until I reached a brightly lit gas station 3 blocks away. I burst inside, gasping, "Call the cops, please. Someone just tried to trap me." The police arrived quickly, recording my frantic account. I gave them Kara's number, the address, every detail of the vanished ad. When they drove me back to the house, it was a desolate shell, dark and silent, its windows veiled by drawn curtains. No sign of anyone. A neighbor emerged cautiously, informing the officers that the house was supposed to be uninhabited. The owner was out of town on a business trip, had been gone all week. Nobody's supposed to be in there, they insisted. The Craigslist post had vanished. Kara's number was dead. My phone, still somewhere in that house, was lost forever. The officer offered a grim warning. It wasn't the first time they'd encountered such insidious traps. People entice victims with a tempting sale. Sometimes it's a simple robbery, but sometimes the horror runs far deeper. They never caught Kara or the man. The very next week, I acquired a television from a pawn shop, a stark reminder of my vow. Craigslist was forever banished from my life. I hadn't initially sought a vehicle for myself. My son Jake had relentlessly pressed me about obtaining his driver's license, yearning for a dependable car to navigate his college courses and part-time work. Initially, I dismissed his pleas, but after weeks of him presenting car listings, flaunting test scores, and practically begging for a trip to the DMV, my resolve crumbled. His 18th birthday loomed just weeks away, and I envisioned this car as the ultimate surprise. He remained blissfully unaware of my secret plan. My budget, however, was painfully tight. After exhaustively scouring the typical online platforms, Auto Trader, Facebook Marketplace, Cars.com, a gnawing frustration began to set in. Every promising vehicle was either prohibitively expensive or snatched up within mere hours. The sole remaining avenue was Craigslist, a platform I had meticulously shunned, haunted by its chilling tales. Yet, driven by sheer desperation, I swallowed my fear and ventured back. To my astonishment, I stumbled upon a listing that felt almost impossibly perfect: a 2004 Honda Accord. Silver, with an immaculate interior, a mere 68,000 miles, no reported accidents, and all for a modest $3,500. The accompanying photographs exuded authenticity, devoid of the overly polished, artificial sheen typical of dealerships. It rested in an unpaved driveway, framed by trees, its silver exterior bearing a subtle film of dust. It looked utterly real, precisely the kind of vehicle an ordinary individual would offer for sale. The seller identified himself as Rick, residing in a tiny settlement named Red Hill, roughly 20 minutes from my own home. I contacted him that evening. His voice, calm and courteous, suggested an older man, perhaps in his late 50s. He explained the sale was due to his daughter having relocated out of state, leaving the car behind. "It runs like a dream," he assured me, adding, "I've just replaced the brakes and battery, no hidden surprises." We arranged to meet the following afternoon. I informed Jake I had errands to attend to, then departed, the cash for the purchase carefully tucked into my jacket pocket. It was a somber Thursday, the sky heavy and bruised with the promise of rain. I vividly recall the profound silence of the drive once I veered off the main highway onto a labyrinth of narrow, tree-lined roads. Red Hill was little more than a forgotten pinprick on the map. His address guided me to a lengthy gravel driveway snaking uphill through dense undergrowth and ancient oak trees. At its summit, a small, single-story house materialized, its paint peeling, its front porch noticeably sagging. The promised Honda was nowhere to be seen, only a rusted green pickup, its tires mismatched, sat beneath a carport. Yet the house number undeniably matched the one in the listing. I pulled onto the shoulder and began my ascent. The gravel crunched ominously beneath my boots, and I became acutely aware of the suffocating silence. No birdsong, no whisper of wind, only the faint, dying hum of my own car's engine echoing behind me. The front door bore a lion's head knocker, but no doorbell. I rapped once, then again. I waited. 5 agonizing minutes bled away. I knocked once more, louder this time. Still, only silence answered. I attempted to call Rick's number, and that's when I heard it, a faint, tinny ringtone unmistakably emanating from within the house. A cold, certain dread began to twist in my gut. This was profoundly wrong. I moved to the window beside the porch, cupping my hands to the grimy glass. Inside, gloom reigned. The curtains were drawn halfway, but I could discern a portion of the living room. Stacks of yellowed newspapers lay everywhere, old furniture draped in ghostly sheets, and what appeared to be a stuffed animal slumped in an armchair. But it wasn't an animal. At first, I mistook it for a mannequin. It wore a hoodie, slouched unnaturally, its skin disturbingly pale, its eyes glassy and lifeless, not the inert gleam of plastic. I recoiled, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. I desperately tried to rationalize it, to convince myself I was merely paranoid, perhaps a strange sculpture, a peculiar doll. But an insistent, primal warning screamed at me, *, do not approach. *, I circled the house, discovering a garage door standing ajar. Inside, rows upon rows of car parts were meticulously stacked and labeled, doors, bumpers, seats. It was far too organized for a mere junker's haphazard collection, unsettlingly clean. The accord was nowhere to be found. Just as I prepared to retreat, my gaze caught another figure through the house's rear window. This one stood with its back to me, perfectly still, facing the backyard as if meticulously positioned. I tapped lightly on the glass, a wave of sickening dread washing over me. No movement. Then, with a soft groan, the back door creaked open slightly, stirred by an unseen breeze, revealing a gaping, black hallway beyond. The distant chime of the phone, that same unsettling melody, filtered from the house's depths before abruptly ceasing. I instinctively recoiled. The grimy blinds through which I'd just peered slammed down with startling speed. A chilling certainty seized me. I had been watched. Pure panic consumed me. I bolted, the cash forgotten, racing to my car. I leaped inside, fumbled the locks, and slammed the accelerator, gravel spitting in my wake, not pausing until the main road offered an illusion of safety. That night, the Craigslist ad had vanished, scrubbed clean. Rick's number was dead. I contacted the police, but with no license plate, no genuine name, their hands were tied. The house, they informed me, had been deserted for ages. The man, whoever he truly was, had used a disposable phone. Jake remained oblivious to the chilling truth. I ultimately bought him a certified used Civic from a dealership, a gift he greeted with unrestrained joy. But even now, when darkness falls and I'm alone on the road, my thoughts drift back to that spectral figure in the chair, its eerie stillness, the immaculate car parts in the garage, the phantom ring of a phone in a desolate house. A cold question always surfaces. How many others fell for Rick's deception? I didn't dare slow down until the highway stretched before me, my chest aching, my hands trembling fiercely on the wheel. My gaze kept flicking to the rearview mirror, bracing for the rusted pickup to materialize, but it never did. Once home, I double-locked every door, lingering in my car, phone clutched tight. Craigslist confirmed my fears. The ad was obliterated, no trace of Rick or the Camry. His number was dead. Sleep offered no escape. The image of that silent figure, its back to me, staring into the void, burned in my mind. The more I replayed it, the less I believed it was mere taxidermy. Its stillness was too precise, too carefully placed, as if crafted to mimic life. The following morning, I reported it to the police. I stuck to the stark facts: a Craigslist car ad, the abandoned house, and a deeply unsettling discovery. I omitted my creeping suspicion that the figure might have been a macabre trophy. They'd never believe such a tale. Surprisingly, the officer didn't dismiss me as delusional. "The ad's gone, you said?" he inquired, his fingers moving deliberately on his keyboard. "Yes, vanished the moment I fled." He paused, then offered, "You'd be shocked how often we encounter these Craigslist traps, bogus sales, sinister lures, sometimes something far darker." He didn't elaborate. A week later, a detective's voicemail confirmed my worst fears. They'd investigated the property, abandoned for over a year, no wreck known to neighbors, no vehicles registered. The pickup was gone, but they found something else. Behind a hidden wall in the basement, a trove of old photographs lay scattered. Dozens of unsuspecting faces caught mid-conversation in their cars, smiling at the front door. Some wore expressions of pure terror. One image showed a man circling the house just as I had. They told me I was among them. The culprit was never apprehended. They believed he preyed on foreclosed homes, using untraceable numbers and deceptive ads to ensnare his victims. Perhaps not to murder, but to terrorize, to control, or for something far more sinister. The fate of the others in those haunting photographs remains a chilling mystery. That night, Craigslist was permanently erased from my life. I've never sought a used car since. Sometimes a dark thought creeps in. What if I had knocked again, ventured deeper into that yard, or hesitated just a moment longer? But I didn't, and perhaps that alone is why I'm still here to whisper this tale. A simple, used hockey net. I never imagined it could jeopardize my son's very life, yet it did. Though 2 decades have passed, some nights I still relive that truck stop, the blinding lights, and the raw echo of his scream. My life unfolded in Brookville, Illinois, a quiet haven where doors often stood unlocked and neighbors still appeared with casseroles. My wife, Denise, worked demanding night shifts as an RN while I kept busy at home, restoring and reselling used cars from our garage. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept us afloat. Our son, Ryan, a fierce 11-year-old, lived and breathed hockey, much like every other kid his age in the Midwest. He idolized Jeremy Roenick and possessed a slapshot that frequently threatened to splinter our fence. A travel league was a luxury we couldn't afford, yet we poured every effort into nurturing his dream. He'd improvise goals from trash cans or tree branches, but it was never quite the same. That winter, his plea for a proper net, a full-size regulation goal, became relentless. We scoured local stores, but even used equipment carried a prohibitive price tag. Then, I remembered Craigslist. Back then, Craigslist was a raw, unfiltered digital bazaar, a stark, unadorned website brimming with listings. No slick graphics, no distracting ads, just a bare-bones platform where, with luck and speed, incredible deals could be snared. I'd once landed a snowblower for free. It still runs perfectly. So one night I found it, a regulation hockey goal, lightly used, priced at a mere $1.50. It even included a puck and 2 sticks. Must pick up. Call for details, no images, just a brief description and a phone number. I stared at the listing, a cold dread prickling at my gut. Something felt off. But the yearning in my son's eyes, the vivid image of him finally having his dream, silenced the alarm bells. I dialed the number. A man answered on the 3rd ring. "Hi, I'm calling about the hockey goal you listed," I began. A pause stretched, then his voice, low and chillingly flat, responded, "Oh, yeah, still got it." "You want it?" It wasn't overtly creepy, just utterly devoid of emotion, a practiced indifference. "My son's been looking for one," I offered. Another beat of silence. "I'm up in Maryland," he finally stated, "but I can meet halfway. Got to be after work though, 9 or so." Marylton, I knew, was over 2 hours north of Brookville. Meeting halfway would place us somewhere isolated, likely a rest stop or a gas station off the interstate. "I can do that," I agreed. "You'll bring the net?" "Yeah, I got a pickup." "My buddy's got the sticks and puck, he'll follow me." A cold shiver traced its way up my spine, the way he delivered that line, so detached, like reciting a script. But again, I pushed the unease down. We settled on a meeting point, a rest stop off I-90 near Whitfield. I told Denise I'd be back in 2 hours. Ryan begged to come. I initially refused, then, against my better judgment, caved. He promised to stay in the van the entire time. That decision still haunts me. The drive was uneventful, filled with Ryan's excited chatter about finally being able to practice properly. It filled me with a fragile hope, a sense of doing something right. We pulled into the rest stop around 8:50 p.m. It was eerily quiet, just a vending area and a sparse line of parking spaces bathed in the sickly yellow-orange glow of floodlights, the kind of light that makes everything appear haunted. I parked under the brightest pole, then turned to Ryan. "Stay in the van. If anything feels weird, lock the doors, okay?" He nodded, offering a quick thumbs up. At precisely 9:06, a black pickup truck, old but meticulously maintained, glided into the lot and stopped 10 feet in front of us. Its windows were darkly tinted, and there was no license plate on the front. I stepped out, walking slowly as the driver's window rolled down. Inside sat a bald, middle-aged man, perhaps in his early 40s, with a square jaw and mirrored sunglasses, even at night. "You, Steve?" he grunted. "Yeah," I replied. "My buddy's got the stuff, should be pulling in behind me." My gaze swept the back of his truck, not a hockey net in sight. My stomach lurched. "Why didn't you bring it all in one truck?" He shrugged. "Couldn't fit." At that exact moment, 2 more trucks rumbled into the lot. One backed in directly behind my van, the other parked to its right. Both were older pickups, identical in style and tint, and neither held any hockey equipment. A cold, hard truth slammed into me. Not panic, but pure, primal instinct. I spun around, yelling, "Ryan, lock the doors now." He reacted instantly. Then the men began to emerge, all 6 of them hulking figures. Some looked like construction workers, others like they'd spent a lifetime in prison waiting rooms. A wall of silence met me, their eyes fixed, unblinking. The bald man emerged from his truck, a casual adjustment of his coat, then a silent nod towards the figure behind my van. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum. "Hold on," I gasped, thrusting my wallet forward. "Take it, it's all I have." I offered him the $80. He snatched it, his thumb flicking through the bills, a dark scowl twisting his face. "Where's the rest?" he demanded. That's truly all I have," I choked out, my breath catching. "Please, just take it and leave." Another silent nod, then 2 of them surged forward, rushing towards the minivan. "Don't you dare touch my son," I roared, a desperate, primal cry. The sickening crunch of glass shattering mixed with Ryan's piercing scream as a tire iron tore through the rear window. That sound, that scream, it shattered something inside me. Then a blinding flash of red and blue sliced through the darkness, a piercing siren wailing closer. A highway patrol car careened into the lot, tires screaming a protest. The officer, a swift blur, saw everything. A powerful spotlight slammed onto the group, pinning them. In that instant, the men scattered like roaches. 2 trucks roared away into the night. The third, trapped between my van and the patrol car, couldn't escape. The officer leaped out, his weapon drawn, his voice barking sharp commands. Reinforcements arrived in under 5 minutes. Ryan was safe, thank God, trembling and sobbing, but whole. The police interrogated us for almost an hour. I poured out every detail. The captured men, it turned out, crumbled quickly. They confessed names, addresses, and admitted this wasn't their first cruel deception using fake Craigslist ads. Their prey, fathers. Dads who would sacrifice anything for their children. That night, the police escorted us home. My hands never stopped shaking on the wheel. Ryan, exhausted, drifted to sleep clutching my arm. I spared Denise the worst, just enough to explain the shattered window and Ryan's inconsolable tears. Weeks later, the detectives delivered the news. 5 of the 6 men were apprehended. Only the bald man, the architect of that terrifying night, the one who made the call, vanished. His face remains etched in my nightmares. I continue to use Craigslist, but never alone. Never after dark, and never, ever with my son again. We eventually found a free net from a neighbor whose child had left for college. But even now, the sight of a black pickup truck sends a shiver down my spine, my eyes instinctively darting to its bed, searching for a hockey goal. I didn't even bother to scout the neighborhood. That might sound reckless, but when you're sleeping in your car making a single can of soup last 2 days, such details blur into insignificance. All I craved was a refuge. A bed, a roof, maybe a door that actually locked. That Craigslist ad, when I found it, felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning soul. Live-in cook needed for private estate, meals included, private quarters. It whispered promises too good to be true. My name is Aaron Mayers. I once thrived as a sous chef at a prestigious Chicago restaurant, but then my world imploded. The pandemic struck, waves of layoffs followed, and the owner quietly shuttered the place. My boyfriend Nate valiantly tried to anchor us both, but then, just months later, he died from a brain aneurysm. No warning, no sign, he simply collapsed in the shower. After that, my life unraveled with terrifying speed. My apartment was gone, my savings vanished, and I found myself adrift, driving from one temporary shelter to another, desperate for any shred of work. So when that listing appeared, I didn't hesitate. The estate lay hidden outside a tiny town in northern Wisconsin, far from the familiar hum of the highway. Reaching it meant navigating a winding gravel road that snaked through dense pine forests. My battered Honda coughed and sputtered its way up the long driveway, where a massive iron gate slowly swung open, as if it had been silently observing my approach. Beyond the gate, the house materialized. An ancient colonial mansion, grand with its tall columns and large, shuttered windows, enveloped in an eerie, profound stillness. On the sprawling steps, a man in a dark gray suit awaited me, tall, composed, perhaps in his mid-40s. He introduced himself as Mr. Haverson, the caretaker. "You're Aaron Mayers?" he inquired, extending a hand. "That's me," I managed, forcing a smile that belied 3 weeks of living out of my trunk. "Prince Julian isn't here today," he stated, ushering me inside, "but he left instructions for your settlement." "You'll meet him later." I was speechless. Prince, like royalty, he must have caught my bewildered expression. "His family has held that title for generations," he explained, with deep European roots. The rituals were merely for show now, a lingering custom. I gave a slight nod, though skepticism gnawed at me. We traversed a pristine corridor, adorned with portraits that seemed to breathe the very air of the 1800s. Stern men in grand military attire, elegant women draped in opulent gowns, their painted eyes following us. At the corridor's end, he unlatched a discreet side door, guiding me down a winding garden path. It led to a modest brick dwelling, almost swallowed by a thick curtain of trees. It wasn't a shack, but certainly a world away from the stately mansion. Utterly private, yes, deeply secluded without a doubt. "This will be your sanctuary," Mr. Haverson declared, the lock clicking open with a stark finality. The interior was starkly simple. Bare wooden floors, a narrow twin bed with a cold metal frame, a tiny bathroom, a cramped kitchenette, and a clunky landline phone, inexplicably bolted to the wall. "No cell signal reaches this far," he added, his words echoing my unspoken thought. "Should the prince or I require your presence, this phone will be our only link. Is that clear?" He lingered, his hand still resting on the doorknob. "A word of caution," he cautioned, his voice dropping slightly. "Do not be startled by sounds in the dark. This isolated area often plays tricks with echoes." The instruction felt profoundly strange, yet I merely offered a strained smile and a quiet thank you. Once he departed, I let my worn duffel bag clatter to the floor and sank onto the bed, releasing a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for what felt like an eternity. I was solitary, yes, but I possessed a ceiling, a barrier, a place to rest. I could finally draw air again, or so I desperately hoped. The initial night was a torment. Not due to the meager bed or the suffocating quiet, but because a chilling conviction clung to me that something lurked just beyond the window pane. Faint taps, hesitant at first, began to echo around 2 in the morning. I yanked the curtain aside, my heart leaping, half expecting to confront a mischievous raccoon or some nocturnal beast. But there was nothing, only the ghostly sway of the pines. At 3:11 a.m., a sound pierced the stillness, a soft, broken whimpering. It wasn't the cry of an animal, but distinctly human, muffled, imbued with a profound, almost sorrowful despair. Sleep became an impossible dream. When I presented myself in the grand kitchen at 7, my exhaustion was starkly evident. "Are you quite well?" inquired an older woman, introducing herself as Margaret, the prince's mother, her gaze softening. "A restless night," I conceded. "Just nerves, I suppose." "A new environment," she murmured, a gentle nod. "That small dwelling has been vacant for a considerable period. It can feel disquieting, but it will improve." She had prepared a hearty breakfast, eggs, golden toast, and expertly diced potatoes. The prince remained absent. I learned he often maintained an unconventional schedule. By afternoon, a semblance of calm settled over me. The daylight offered reassurance, and I convinced myself the previous night's terrors were merely the cruel illusions of an overtired mind. After serving dinner, I retreated to my solitary quarters. I cleansed myself, then slipped into bed, and that's when the torment resurfaced. The taps were more insistent now, the whimpering a deeper, guttural groan, like someone racked with agonizing pain. I bolted upright, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was no mere echo. I sprang from the bed, flipped on the light, and meticulously scoured every inch of the room. But as I pressed my ear to the cold wooden floor, the sound became horrifyingly clear. It emanated from directly beneath the floorboards. The following dawn, I cornered Mr. Haverson, my voice tight. "May I inquire about the fate of the previous cook?" He seemed visibly unnerved. "Why do you ask?" he countered. "Just a fleeting curiosity," I fabricated, my gaze unwavering. He hesitated, a shadow crossing his face. "Her name was Dana," he finally revealed. "She arrived 6 months prior, occupying that very house. She claimed to cherish the solitude, but after merely 3 weeks she simply vanished, no indication of a struggle. Her possessions remained untouched. We presumed she departed in the dead of night. Her husband later appeared, seeking her, but she was irretrievably gone. The authorities were summoned, yet their investigation yielded no definitive answers. My stomach coiled into a cold knot. "You simply abandoned the matter?" I whispered, aghast. He nodded grimly. "We conducted a thorough search, I assure you, but not a single trace emerged. It was as if she had dissolved into the very air. That night, the sounds escalated beyond endurance. The taps morphed into violent thuds, the whimpering into desperate, guttural pleas. I ripped the rug from the floor, my gaze frantically scanning for any dislodged planks. Near the bed, I discovered 3 boards, subtly uneven. My hands shook uncontrollably as I leveraged one upwards. Beneath lay a swatch of cloth, white yet grotesquely stained. I peeled it back, and the putrid stench assaulted me first. Then her face. Mummified, a silent scream etched into its terrified features. A raw, guttural shriek tore from my throat, leaving me voiceless. The authorities descended, summoned by Haverson's panicked call. The gruesome discovery was unearthed. It was Dana. The subsequent autopsy confirmed strangulation. Her husband, the very man who had feigned a search, had lingered just long enough one night to commit murder and inter her beneath the floorboards. He had cynically dressed a mannequin in her attire, deceiving the security cameras, then simply walked away as if nothing had transpired. They apprehended him in Milwaukee, where he confessed, claiming she had intended to abandon him. I tendered my resignation the same agonizing day. I drove relentlessly back to Chicago, pulling my car to a halt outside the skeletal remains of my former restaurant, and there I wept for a full, desolate hour. The familiar agony of my old life suddenly felt like a fortress compared to the terrifying uncertainty of a new beginning. Some gateways, particularly those flung wide by desperation, are traps. I usually slept through the sun's harsh glare, not from lethargy or despair, but because my nights were consumed by grueling 12-hour security shifts at a Birmingham business park. The work was soul-numbingly repetitive, endless camera feeds, routine patrols, but it was my anchor. In that isolated existence, my phone was my lifeline, my waking call, my schedule, my soul connection. So when I jolted awake one afternoon to a barrage of missed calls and frantic texts from my landlord, a cold knot twisted in my gut. "Water leak downstairs, your supply is cut." I groaned, dragged myself from bed, and dialed him back. He didn't mince words. A torrent of water was pouring into the apartment below, and the source, he declared, was my bathroom ceiling. Because I'd been unreachable, my water supply had been severed hours ago. No coffee, no shower, no flushing, a primitive existence. I asked about a repair, and his response was chillingly direct. "You're flat, your problem. Send me the bill, I'll reimburse." Groggy and seething, I hung up and began a frantic hunt. Online plumbers, Facebook recommendations, emergency hotlines, everyone was either swamped, silent, or demanding outrageous fees. Just as despair threatened to consume me, I messaged Amy. She offered her couch, then dropped the fateful suggestion, "Why not try Craigslist?" Sometimes you find quick, cheap help there. The platform always felt like a digital abyss, a chaotic frontier, but I was cornered. I plunged into the household services section, and there it was, 38-year-old handyman. Expert, fair price, swift reply, plumbing, electrical, small fixes. Text or call, the ad was stark, just a number. I hesitated, then sent a text. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Marcus here," he chirped. I laid out my predicament. To my shock, he replied, "No worries, I'll be there in an hour, tops." Sounds simple. His voice was almost too bright, too reassuring. He guessed a loose seal, a minor crack. Naively, I believed him. True to his word, an hour later, a text flashed. He was outside. I hadn't even given him my flat number, so I buzzed him in and waited, a knot of exhaustion in my chest. When the door swung open, he seemed utterly unremarkable. Jeans, a dark hoodie, a tool bag slung over his shoulder, short hair, a faint stubble. No smile, no menace. "Bathrooms down the hall," I mumbled, and he strode in without a second thought. As he vanished, I retreated to the kitchen, too drained to play host. I poured a glass of orange juice, hoping the sweetness would cut through the fog. Then his voice echoed, "Hey, can you come take a look at this? Something seems off." I shuffled towards the doorway, peering in. That's the last coherent memory I possess. The next instant, a blinding white light consumed everything, followed by a cacophony of muffled voices. Someone was chanting my name, a woman's voice, insistent. "Stay with us, Tom. You're safe. Don't move." I forced my eyes open, blinking against the searing beam of a paramedic's flashlight. My skull throbbed, my throat was parched. I tried to rise, but gentle hands held me down. "You've sustained a head injury. Remain still. We're transporting you to the hospital." My heart was a frantic drum. I turned my head, and there was Amy, her face streaked with tears. She'd come to check on me when my messages went unanswered. Thank God for her spare key. "He's all right, isn't he?" she choked out to them. The raw terror in her eyes was a mirror, and something inside me shattered. I began to tremble uncontrollably. The world swam as they wheeled me from my flat, the EMT's hushed words cutting through the haze. A concussion, a miracle I was still breathing. Amy's timely arrival, they said, had snatched me from a slow, silent bleed-out. At the hospital, a relentless series of tests began. They fought to keep me conscious, probing for details of a memory that was now a fractured, terrifying mosaic. The full, brutal truth only surfaced when a detective arrived. My TV, my laptop, every last dollar, my treasured jewelry all vanished. My bedroom was a scene of violent chaos, ransacked and desecrated. Yet the bathroom, the very place he'd supposedly come to fix, remained untouched, every tile perfectly aligned, a chilling mockery. "We've seen this before," the officer grimly informed me. A Craigslist phantom spinning a tale, then a swift, brutal strike. Valuables gone, no fingerprints, a different burner phone every time. They hadn't caught him. They couldn't even confirm if it was the same ghost haunting each victim, only the chillingly identical method. And I, utterly vulnerable, had no renter's insurance to cushion the fall. A jagged scar now scored my cheekbone, a permanent brand from where my head had slammed against the floor. But that physical wound was nothing compared to the deeper, unseen damage that festered in the weeks that followed. For weeks, my flat became a cage. The outside world ceased to exist. Calls went unanswered, food withered in the fridge. A cold dread took root, and soon a kitchen knife became my constant, chilling companion by the bed. I bought a camera for the door, then spent endless hours simply staring at its feed, trapped in a silent vigil, waiting for a threat that might never come or might already be inside. Even now, years later, the smallest unexpected knock sends a jolt of ice through me. Footsteps in the hall trigger a frantic leap. Trust, once a natural impulse, withered and died. Dating became an impossibility, inviting anyone into my sanctuary, an unthinkable risk. Amy, bless her, tried to pull me back from the brink. She truly did. But life, relentless and unyielding, eventually called her away for work. And then the silence of my solitude became absolute. The scars, both visible and invisible, lingered. The one on my cheekbone, now veiled by a beard, was merely a surface wound. But the deeper gashes remained, the quiet panic when night sounds stir, the instinct to check every lock twice, the crushing guilt of trusting the wrong person. Yes, Craigslist carved a lesson into my soul, a lesson I will carry until my dying breath. The physical scar persists beneath the beard, a ghost of that night. Yet, just last week, in a desperate act of defiance, I finally returned the kitchen knife to its drawer. Not because the fear has vanished, not because I suddenly feel safe, but because I yearn to.